Listen, I will try to live in the optimistic side of things, right? With Tyson Forster, you saw a guy who over the last, 2 weeks of the season really seemed to find some level of comfort and start to put the puck in the back of the net. And I do understand they faced some backup goalies. They faced some teams that were essentially out of the playoffs. They faced a few teams, in fairness, that were actively still fighting for a playoff spot, like Columbus was, like Montreal was. So it's not like they fought against a bunch of other bottom-feeding teams the entire time, right? There is something kind of encouraging about the fact that over the last couple of weeks, or if you want to go post-firing of John Tortorella, this team, for better or worse, and I'd argue now, for better, just because of where they finished, for better, they didn't fall on their faces. They actually kind of picked themselves up. They dusted themselves off, and they can probably feel somewhat proud of the results going into the offseason. Now, in fairness, was it ever really in play for them to get to the number 3 spot in the draft lottery? No, not really. I don't think that was ever truly in play. I mean, listen, Chicago was Chicago all year. San Jose was San No Way all year. Nashville, they were running from the Predators rather than being them themselves. They were the prey. They were the Nashville prey this season. So I didn't think that the Flyers were ever going to really get to number 3. But getting to number 4, I think is almost like it's a consolation prize of sorts for Flyers fans everywhere. Because in fairness, if you're a Flyers fan who's stuck with this team, and I always feel bad for the people who only watch one sport, but if you are only a Flyers fan, you don't care about the Eagles or the Phillies or the Sixers or the Union or anything else, and this is your one team every year, I feel bad for you. But the good news is you've at least been rewarded with what should be a really good player coming out of the draft. Regardless of where the ping pong balls go, you're going to finish in the top 6, which means, in theory, you're going to get one of that top tier, that top 6 player tier. And you should feel good about that. Because, I don't know, is this karmic payback for the Cutter Gauthier thing not working out? Is this karmic payback for Nolan Patrick not working out? I don't know. And listen, there are a whole bunch of pundits that are going to weigh in here with who's going to go number 1. It seems like Schaefer right now kind of plugs in as the best player in the draft. He's a defenseman. If you're the Flyers and you somehow win this draft, you do need a 1C, but do you pass up on a guy who very much is projecting to be a number 1 defenseman? I'd go with the number 1 defenseman. I know that might not be popular, but I think you kind of go best player in the draft. This team has a lot of holes. They need a 1C, a 1D, and a 1G. So whichever one you end up getting in this draft, if you can get any of them, that is a positive. And you're going to pick in the higher end of this draft. Once again, pair that guy with Matvei Michkov and hopefully believe that you have the building blocks of what could be a contending team that's not just going to be a bubble playoff team for the next 6 years. You want to have that team, that belief that you have the cornerstone pieces to build around that not only are going to, in their own right, become stars or superstars, but are going to be so intriguing that when this team is able to go out and maybe sign an offer sheet for an RFA, or maybe try to go out in unrestricted free agency, probably in 2026 when they have more money and there are better names available, maybe that's when you're able to get a guy that hadn't previously considered Philadelphia. They go, oh, I can go play with Matvei Michkov. I can go play with a guy who has 40-plus goal upside. I can go play with whoever this draft pick ends up being. And then you kind of pair that with Konechny is still a guy that's liked and is a guy that can perform. You look at, again, it's kind of difficult to do this, but you can look at Forsters and Brinks and maybe Tippett if the gods be good, maybe Tippett bounces back next year. There are players on this team that could be intriguing to play with. And by the way, even though Sean Couturier is not a 1C anymore, although he has looked better since the firing of Torts, and he is coming off 2 back surgeries, and that is going to take a long time to kind of get back from, he's still not nothing. He's still a good locker room dude. He's still a guy who goes out and gives it his all. He's still a guy that is going to be a mainstay of this team. That contract is untradeable. So, he's going to be here. And there is still value to that player. Again, it might not be as a 1C, but certainly as a guy who you would want to imagine is going to take a Jetlichenko under his wing. And if you get a center in this draft, he's going to put that guy under his wing as well. That's a good thing. And again, it's a good locker room presence. That's not a toxic individual. That's a highly respected player. You put all that together and you say, you know what? maybe this thing can turn around a little bit faster than you expect. Now, it should be very well known at this point. I am not a fan of gaslighting your fans into believing that the team is better than they are, and then you build what is a playoff bubble team, and then you're stuck in hockey purgatory every year. I've been very much against that. I've now been down around or covering the Flyers for, I think this was my 7th season, right? In some capacity. They've missed the playoffs for 5 years in a row. I haven't gotten to actually go down and cover a very good team since there was the weird little bubble tournament where the Flyers in a round robin ended up being the number 1 seed in the East. That was dumb. That team prior to the bubble, they were playing really well, and there was a thought that maybe they were going to end up in the top half of the Eastern Conference. But, for the most part, I haven't gotten to cover a good team. And so the idea here of seeing those building blocks and seeing some of these young guys take a step, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that now all of a sudden, because Tyson Foerster ended the season on a stronger note, that means he's going to somehow become a 35-goal scorer next year. I'm not going to tell you that this was just a one-off down year for Owen Tippett, but next year he's going to be a 30-goal scorer. There are questions I have around his game. But I can tell you that I think that where this team is right now is in an exponentially better position than they were even 3 years ago, right? You're not trying to plug and play. Cam Atkinson, really good guy, didn't perform particularly well once he was here. Most people thought that he was kind of past the prime of his career. You're not going out and acquiring those kind of players now in an effort to save your GM's job. You're not looking to make a deal for a one-year player in a Matt Niskanen who walked away, who retired, and Chuck Fletcher could never convince to come back. You're not trying to take what is potentially a risky move in a Ryan Ellis that had some injury concerns and, for better or worse, you thought was going to be healthy and certainly was not. You don't have to make those moves right now to try to save the front office, because whether you like it or not, this front office is safe. This front office is being given an actual opportunity to try to have a vision and build off of it. Now, I would argue that might have been hampered, or it might have been hindered a little bit by John Tortorella's presence and the fact that ownership really liked him. But now, going into this offseason, you have Danny Briere really in charge and Keith Jones there in support. But you have those two that now get to go out and hire a coach, and that get to kind of dictate what's going to happen this offseason. And they're going to be the ones leading that charge. Now, will the new coach have input? Of course. But this to me isn't the start of the Danny Briere era. But for once, it actually kind of feels like he's going to be able to build this team how he wants to. This is the most important offseason in his career as an executive, and I'd argue this might be the most important offseason that the Flyers have had in a very, very long time. In a really long time. They have to get this right. And it certainly helps that you have 3 first-round picks and 4 second-round picks. I would not expect them to use all 7 of those picks this year. Is it possible that the Colorado pick or the Edmonton pick maybe get punted to 2026? Maybe there's a team that wants to sneak back into the end of the first round, and you get what could ultimately be a more valuable pick in 2026 just because there's a team that's really infatuated with a guy late in this round? Maybe. Again, you're kind of going off of more than a year from now, but a lot of scouts and pundits seem to believe that the 2026 draft could have some higher-end players. You're not going to be able to trade the Edmonton and or Colorado pick to a team that's going to have a top 5 pick next year. That won't happen. But it's all about, evaluating what you think your team's holes are, deciding if whether or not picking at the end of the first round this year makes sense, or do you punt it a year? Do you package 1 or 2 of those late first-round picks and maybe some of those second-round picks and go out and get a guy who could be a more consistent center? And I brought this up on Wednesday's show. I think the number 1 priority right now, if you are the Philadelphia Flyers, has to be, how do we get a center here that can play with Matvei Michkov and can unlock Matvei Michkov and be the guy who centers Matvei Michkov for the majority of a season? How do you get that guy? It doesn't have to be the long-term, 8-year, 10-year 1C. That doesn't necessarily have to happen right now. Get him somebody who is better than Morgan Frost, better than the current version of Sean Couturier, better than a Noah Cates. Go out and get a guy that can unlock Michkov, because if you get that guy, it's going to pay massive dividends.